Good. Okay. Thanks for coming. You want to bring it over here? Yep, just gone live, so. We're going to get going. We're missing Alicia Kane. Hi. Hang on. Sorry, guys. Lots of noise there. Hi, guys. We're here at the Free Assange rally for his final plea, I guess, to not be extradited to the US. There's a hearing in the UK shortly, today, tomorrow, something like that. So yeah, we're ready for some speeches, so I'll just get ready for that. Here at the British High Commission in Canberra.
Thank you. Old radicals. But this morning I looked like an old radical because we were up at 5 January, like, around Canberra again. I was we took it right here. So it's a bit of an effort. A couple of hours to put them up in the morning. Exactly, I'm in the Madison place soon. Thanks for coming.
Speech is starting shortly.
Yeah, I think so. Why? Gorgeous. Good. We don't need this thing. It's always hard, isn't it? My phone's right at the limit of the thingo. That's not going to work.
Hey Dennis, thanks for joining me. Only one so far, currently. Oh no, there's 5 on there. Fabulous. Thanks for being there. we're here outside the British High Commission in Canberra, just about to have some speeches for Julian Assange. He's facing his final plea to not be extradited to the US in the UK at the moment, so a little bit of pressure, on the High Commission to do the right thing. We're not even elected. No, I mean, if we were a bit more serious, surely not. Hope the traffic noise isn't too bad. We're right next to the roadside. A lot of buses going past.
Good afternoon, folks. We might get our little show on the road here, if you'd like to gather round. And we do thank you all for coming. We know we've got other things to do, but this is a very important watershed moment for the human race in one aspect, the fact that Julian is up on charges. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country. We're on Ngunnawal and Lambury land, and we pay our respects to their custodianship and, of course, respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Now, we all know why we're here. It's a very sad day for justice that we're even in this position, and we're all praying, hoping, wishing for a good outcome for Julian Assange after the hearing in London today and tomorrow, which they're about 8 or 9 hours behind us. So we have a section of speakers here. I'd like to introduce to Larice Vera. Just address my notes. Larice is an educator, writer and editor, and has been a staunch supporter of Julian Assange. And with Jane, where's Jane? Here's Jane behind. These powerful twosome organised a very large rally up on Canberra lawns at the Parliament House last year with 8 politicians speaking from all sides of politics. It was the first time we got the whole crossbench together to speak about the situation with Julian Assange.
And Christian.
And Christian here, of course, he was involved as well. And Sue. So we thank you all for coming again, and I'll pass over. Please welcome Larice.
Thank you. Life will change for Julian Assange, his family and the world by the end of this week. There are several possible outcomes. Either he'll be freed in the arms of his family, still sitting in a UK prison waiting for his next appeal to be heard, granted by either the UK or the European Court of Human Rights. He may be on a plane to a USA dungeon under the careful watch of CIA officers, the same organisation who commit crimes all over the world, who plan to murder him, who will have a major say in his day-to-day treatment. Or he will find a way to suicide. This is well documented in his first hearing under Baraitser, and was why he was not immediately handed over to the USA then. This merely prolonged his torture and may have been the whole point. Make no mistake, the criminals are in charge. There is no justice yet. Least likely is that Julian will be free. I'm sorry, I have to say it. But whatever happens to Julian, we still have the fight of our lives. And we must do it for the lives of our children and grandchildren. They will either live in a dystopian hell world where wrong thought is a crime, where a free press and investigative journalism are dead, with forever wars, as Julian warned, or they'll live in freedom with the First Amendment, free speech, and a responsible free press still in place, doing their job to hold the powerful to account and continue to question what is done in our name. We don't live in democracies. We live in a modern feudal state where 1% owns 95% of the wealth. The 1% is no different from the kings and queens of the past. The king in his castle owns everything merely because he declared he did, and he gathered power around himself by paying enforcers who'll do anything for a bag of gold. Who do you know in this world who'll do anything for a bag of gold? We, the peasants, dwell in humpies we can barely afford and subsist on ground the king owns. He owns us, our time, our labour, our means of production, and almost all of the profit that comes from that effort. And he can take it all away with a single command, a new decree. We've tried to rebel over the years. We've had wars, unions, protests, laws to protect us, people's cooperatives, communes, lands in common. We even thought we had this thing called democracy for a good couple of 100 years. But the king and his enforcers, these days called world governments, those narrative spinners, blind us with words and throw in a few feasts per year and some pretty baubles to keep us happy and compliant. The wars of the king kills off generations of our young and the young of other nations without a qualm. The peasants are always expendable. It doesn't matter how many of us march with our pitchforks and spades, yelling at the castle walls, demanding he stops the killing. He won't. He can't. He lives to kill. He lives to make weapons. That is his career. We must face it. Because of our constant uprisings, the king has worked behind the scenes to disempower us, to finally subjugate us. His ballads and broadsides are now known as the mainstream press. His decrees and proclamations, legislation, and this legislation is designed to suppress and control we, the peasants. Anything that disagrees with his narrative is called misinformation, disinformation, even malinformation. Did you know what malinformation means? It's been defined by the USA government. It means information that, although while true, is not the sort of thing they want you to be talking about. The people fight back with their own underground broadsides called the independent press and social media. They are lampooned, smeared, imprisoned, and these days more often than not murdered. Julian Assange sits rotting in the king's dungeon. Seeing before anyone what the king was up to, he warned us of the nefarious plans to make it seem as though we were free when in fact we are not. He saw that lies and wars were constant and truth was rare. Their subversive, rebellious, dangerous prisoner is our freedom fighter, our truth teller, is he? Yes. As we speak, our rulers are committing genocide before our very eyes. As the bombs fall, tearing children limb from limb, our governments send money and weapons, committing war crimes daily. While talking about ceasefires out of the corner of their lying mouths. We are yelling at our government. Stop! Stop! Please! For the love of God, stop! Can they stop? Will they stop? They can't stop. They are under rules that we know not of. They are fulfilling someone's plan who we don't know of. They are bought and paid for by powerful corporate wealth in banking, pharma, the weapons industry, anything once state-owned that is owned by the people is now owned by some global corporation or even very powerful individuals. Their sole reason for living is profit. Profit first and last. People are just meat for their mill. If they wantonly murder so many Palestinian children, do you really suppose they will stop there? Do you really think our children will be safe? We, the people, have made calls to our rulers in the name of empathy, sympathy, compassion, and to the law of the land on behalf of Julian to stop these forever wars. But did this move the king? Do you really think? Do you really think I can turn a page? Do you really think how much it matters that we yell at the castle walls? And the law, the king scoffs at the law. He's not subject to the law. He writes the law. It is the king himself that must be brought down. It is a system of the 1% of mega wealthy oligarchs in the world who run the world that we must confront. The people must resist. This is what Julian Assange told us to do over and over. Even as he was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy, he yelled over and over. What did he yell? Do you remember? You can resist. You must resist, is what he yelled over and over. He meant we can. We, you and I, we can resist the corrupt power structure that had already imprisoned him. Resist. Resist the authoritarian drive to control our every move. Resist the lies of empire. Resist the weaponization of the banking system, the environment, unnecessary secrecy, the media, censorship. All are being weaponized against us. Resist so that the 10 years that Julian Assange has spent enduring torture is not wasted. Learn from it. Learn from him. If Julian is free this week, or even if he isn't, we will still work with him, on behalf of him. If not, we resist in his name, for his sake, and most of all, resist for the freedom and security of future generations. You can resist. You must resist. We can resist. We must resist. We can resist. We must resist. We can resist. We must resist.
Thank you, Louise. Passionate speech, and I think she's reflecting all of our views on this. Now, our next speaker needs no introduction, but I'll read a brief, which is still a time. We have the wonderful Bernard Collaery here today. Bernard's been a long-term friend of the Alliance Against Political Prosecution. That's our banner there. And has been active to defend those Australians being unfairly prosecuted and advocate for truth and justice. Bernard's a barrister, lawyer, and a former politician. As you may remember, some of you from Canberra, he was a member of the Australian Capital Territory's first Legislative Assembly. He was the Attorney General, and we also have, he was the member of the Assembly for Residents Rally Party from 89 to 92. He served as Deputy Chief Minister and Attorney General from 89 to 91 in the Kane Alliance government. So, as you know, Bernard acted as a whistleblower advocate for Witness K and was charged by our own government in 2018 by the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions under the National Security Information Act with disclosing protected intelligence information, which is basically about our government spying on the East Timorese, which was a scandal, which was covered up, and in which Australian government bugged their embassy, their parliament officers in order to gain an advantage during the commercial negotiations to carve up the resource-rich Timor Sea. Now, Bernard's not allowed to talk about that. He's been gagged, but he is out, and we're lucky to have him here today. Please welcome Bernard Collaery.
Thank you, Craig. I want to acknowledge the presence today of so many faces I know, but particularly there was one morning during my trial and persecution, windy, cold morning outside the Supreme Court, and there was a young a woman holding a placard or standing next to someone fighting the gays. She looked about 6 or 7 months pregnant, and I hadn't recognised her, but I wanted to come back out of court and thank her, and I do now publicly, Alicia Payne. There she is. And Alicia, you represent, you were my local rep. As a jury barrister, I stayed away from politics for obvious reasons. I didn't know you, but I know you now, and I think you're a very fine politician. Now, there's also someone right in front of me wearing a T-shirt. It says, "Freedom from Fear." That reminded me of President Roosevelt's 4 freedoms when the world seemed transfixed with fear. The Nazi invasions of Europe, and John Curtin became our Prime Minister, and the wonderful intellectual Attorney General Bert Evett was working with John Curtin and meeting frequently with President Roosevelt. And we were building out of that a new world. And I grew up in the aftermath of that war, as some of you know. And we believed in those 4 freedoms. And Bert Evett, in fact, tried in 1942 to bring in, under the guise of running the war, the 4 freedoms. He didn't get it done. He was blocked by, you know, one of Dutton's predecessors. But Julian and I know each other, and of course I know his family. But I should tell you that during the early resistance years in the 80s, Julian and his brother Gabriel were computer nerds, and they helped us set up our secret mini-hub communication system, I can now tell you, out of a disused substation in Carlton, Victoria. And in those years, you couldn't build a communication device in occupied Timor unless you carried the hardware in bit by bit. And then you needed nerds to help you assemble it and so forth. And I don't mean anything pejorative saying nerds, because I can see one here at least. But Julian and Gabriel helped us a lot, and move on quite a few years when President of the Resistance, Shinano Guzmao, asked me to get in touch with Julian from where I was in Cambridge at the Ecuadorian embassy to release some papers dealing with issues affecting our then fight for justice for the Timorese. And Jeffrey Robertson was his lawyer at the time, and Jeffrey and I had been classmates at law school, and Jeffrey obliged, and we at a certain juncture received signal assistance from WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks assists all journalists who are part of the soul of justice in our society. This is a monstrous threat to journalism because the United States congressional legal process is slowly, inexorably stretching its territorial arm into foreign countries and attempting to bring citizens of those countries back to America for trial of offences allegedly committed abroad. Now, at the moment, I'm representing an American pilot who's been 454 days in solitary confinement in Australia in the 21st century, Daniel Duggan. I'm also representing another person also in solitary confinement as a national security detainee in the New South Wales jail in solitary confinement. We do not at the moment have freedom from fear. All those whistleblowers, good people, decent people, are potentially, in terms of shared allied national security, potentially extraditable to the United States for trial in the United States. Did you know that? The United States is legislating its arm into our country. And we have to balance our legitimate national security interests with the United States and Canada and other democracies with the extraterritorial reach that expanded greatly under President Trump. Julian is subject to that extraterritorial reach. And as Balzac wrote, you judge a society by its system of justice. You judge a civilization by its system of justice. The British system of justice is under profound review at the moment. There's been a Brown report. We also need a review in Australia. Democracy is weak. It's having to suffer immoderate reforms to protect us from authoritarianism. But we are becoming authoritarian ourselves in that paradox. And essentially, what we need to do is to deliver not just Julian from fear and unwarranted detention. We have to deliver our own society from fear. And fear it is, because good journalism is now under profound attack throughout the Western world. And that is a very difficult problem. Christine said it all earlier, and I'm sure Alicia will have some good things to say too. Some of the speakers these days talk about our government. I'd like to be very clear. The coalition government is not fit to control our intelligence services. The coalition government is not fit to be administering our laws at the moment. It's unfit to be in power. I don't want to go political because I earn my living in front of juries, but the reality is potentially we could have a coalition in power again, and until it recants what it's done over the years, it's not fit to control our systems of justice or our intelligence agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard Kaleri. It's always good to have Bernard here, supporting the cause for truth and justice. Our next speaker, Dr. Sue Warren, former GP in Canberra, so don't talk to her about your diverticulitis. She's a member of the board of the Australian for ICAN, the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. She's also been a tireless disarmament advocate for over 30 years and is a board member of International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War and a vice president of the Medical Association for Prevention of War in Australia. Sue has been a great supporter of Truth and Justice and a regular contributor and supporter of our work with the AAPP, the Alliance Against Political Prosecution. So if I can get Sue Warren, give her a warm welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. Some of that, somebody sent you an old bio. I'm not quite that busy these days. But anyway, thank you. And thank you all for coming. I acknowledge that we're on the lands of the stolen lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I'd also like to thank and congratulate Alicia Kane for coming. It's terrific to see you here, Alicia. Is that better? Okay, great. So here we are again to speak out for the rights of Julian Assange, for freedom for him and for the protection of our press freedoms. And our message today is particularly directed to one of the nations, one of the Western nations that constantly talks about freedom and democracy, but is most often in the habit of undermining it. One of our two partners in AUKUS, in fact, the Australia-US-UK alliance, and we're talking, of course, about the United Kingdom. We're here to tell the United Kingdom to stop talking about democracy and freedom and to actually start practicing it and strengthening it and defending it. In March last year, the three AUKUS leaders stated the following when they were announcing the nuclear submarines. They said, we believe in a world that protects freedom and respects human rights, the rule of law, the independence of sovereign states, and the rules-based international order. So on human rights, do human rights allow the United Kingdom to lock up someone for years on end, most of it in solitary confinement, without even charging them with any offence, and all for the benefit of another nation that is persecuting that person? Is that what human rights looks like? The independence of sovereign states. Is Australia independent? Does this independence allow the United Kingdom to override the wishes of the Australian Parliament in relation to one of our own citizens? Is that independence? No. On the rules-based international order, how on earth can a rules-based international order be achieved when those who publish evidence of grievous violations, such as Assange and WikiLeaks, when those organisations and people are locked away as a warning to others? That cannot help a rules-based international order. It can only undermine it. And right now we hear the sanctimonious words about the death in prison in Russia of Alexei Navalny. And to be clear, yes, Navalny's death raises grave concerns about political repression in Russia. But the UK claims to be above all of that. Foreign Minister David Cameron said on Saturday, there should be consequences when appalling human rights outrages like this take place. And he continued, what we do is we look at whether there are individual people that are responsible and whether there are individual actions that we can take. So in the case of Assange, the action that the UK can take is obvious. Stop your appalling complicity in this sordid saga of Assange's persecution, and as an immediate step, refuse to extradite him to the United States. Yes. And ditto to the United States. To the US, put your own house in order before you criticise others. President Biden has stated, a free press is essential to the health of a democracy. So why then does the US persecute journalists who depend on a free press to do their work? The persecution of Assange does not stop at locking him up in a solitary cell. As we've heard earlier, in 2021 it was revealed that the CIA had plotted to poison or kidnap Assange in 2017 when he was still in the Ecuadorian embassy. And then there's the factor of Assange's very poor health, which has suffered from incarceration in Belmarsh prison for nearly 5 years, and will likely deteriorate greatly if he is to be extradited. Human rights lawyer Kelly Tranter has written in recent days in the publication Declassified Australia, which I would recommend, of the other risks that Assange faces if he is extradited, including the negligible chance of a fair trial and the near certainty of serving a life sentence under brutal conditions. Kelly Tranter also says that Assange faces another risk too, which is the possibility of the death sentence. In the US, there are certain crimes under federal jurisdiction, including espionage, that can attract the death penalty, even if the state where the trial takes place does not have the death penalty. UK law does not allow the extradition of a person to any jurisdiction where they may face the death penalty. So how is the UK going to get around this? Or is UK law there to be broken when it gets in the way? And a further question which I alluded to earlier to the British government. Do you respect the wishes of the Australian Parliament in this matter? There's a vote in our Parliament last week where 2/3 of our federal parliamentarians in the House voting overwhelmingly to urge the US and the UK to allow Assange to return to Australia. Does that vote mean anything to you in the United Kingdom? Or does the Australian Parliament have less say over what happens to our citizens than that of other countries? And at this point, I do want to thank and congratulate, again, not only Alicia Kane, but also particularly Andrew Wilkie for bringing that motion to the Parliament last week. And to all the other members of the Parliamentary Friends of Julian Assange for the sterling efforts that they've made to see Julian Assange released. So in conclusion, we are witnessing the persecution by the US of a man whose publications expose their own crimes. Justice is being turned on its head. And in all this country, the United Kingdom, is complicit. This has implications for us all, as Bernard has outlined. The attempts to destroy Assange are being used as an example to other journalists, the very people we rely on to know what is done in our name. And it's hard to think of anything more anti-democratic than this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Silwan. Again, a passionate speech and a great supporter. A little change of ceremony. Because some of our speakers have to leave, I'll call all speakers up now for a photo, a group photo, if you'd like to come forward. And everyone who wants a shot, please get out here. We'll do it right here, folks, I think, right across the front. Just line up. Shoot away, everyone. We okay? Not yet?
Can we move just in front of that, the alliance, that banner? John, don't trip over that one. Yeah, just like a line.
Michelle is our crowd controller, photographer.
That's it, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Sorry everyone, just move around.
Okay, free Julian.
You come forward. Okay. No, Bernard. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's one.
No, someone be in your way.
Oh, yeah.
Get your last shots off. 3, 2. Turn a bit. Thank you very much. Now, because of commitments, our local Labor MP, I'll call Alicia Payne to say a few words. Alicia's a community advocate in her electorate. She's a federal member for the ALP in Canberra and is involved and, of course, votes on the side of Assange. I think last week it was 86 votes against 42, thereabouts, to support the release of Assange in Parliament. That was led by Alan Wilkie, and Albanese even got up and said a few words, which was great. So she's a brave lady to get up here. It's been hard to get Labor people up here, but they do support it, but it's been hard for them to be vocal. So we really do welcome Alicia Payne today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig, and I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today and pay my respects to them. It's great to stand here today with so many constituents and familiar faces standing here in support of human rights and democracy. And I want to thank you, Bernard, for your very generous words before. It's absolutely an honour to stand with you and a responsibility to defend your rights, and I'm so pleased that your prosecution was dropped and you're here with us today. And yeah, I also do want to acknowledge the Alliance for the great work that you've done in bringing people together, bringing voices together in support of whistleblowers and others facing prosecutions. Today we're standing here in front of the British High Commission as a plea to our friends to respect the human rights of this man, Julian Assange, who has suffered already too much. We join calls from the UN Rapporteur on Torture for his extradition to be dropped from many people, and last week the Australian Parliament, which I was incredibly pleased that we had such a strong vote, including government support on that motion, brought by Andrew Wilkie and seconded by Labor's Josh Wilson, to drop the extradition and to bring Julian home. Of course, as we all well know, this week he faces his appeal, and if that is lost at any moment, he can be put on a plane and taken to the US, and we're very fearful about what could happen with him there. This is about human rights. He has been in Belmarsh prison now for 5 years, and before that many years in the Ecuadorian embassy, and all those close to him, his family and everyone that is in contact with him has serious fears for his health and that he wouldn't actually survive that extradition. And it should count for something to be an Australian citizen. It should mean something, and our friends should respect that. The UK and the US, our Parliament has voted for this. Our Prime Minister has said this should be brought to a close, as have many others in our government. And before we had that vote, last year there was a significant number of people from Australian parliaments, federal and state, who signed a letter to the US government asking to drop the extradition as well. You should not be prosecuted for telling the truth. This is about Julian Assange and about, you know, what he did to shine light on the terrible things that were happening. But it's also about all of us and a right to justice and a right to transparency around charges and, you know, not being put in a prison for telling the truth, for exposing something that was happening, for being a journalist, essentially. And when, you know, one of us loses those rights, has those rights abused, it affects all of us. So I want to thank you all for your advocacy on this. And, you know, this is a last, you know, a desperate plea to, as I say, Friends of Australia, the UK government and the US to drop the extradition, to allow Julian to come home, a husband and a father, brother, a son. I've met with Julian's father and it is absolutely, you know, so hard to fathom what that would be like to see your beloved family member go through this. And we just please bring him home.
Thank you very much, Elisa Payne from the ALP in Canberra. Alicia's probably got to go. I think Berta may have to leave soon too, but commitments. Our last speaker today is Mr. Christian Lambang Fournier. He's an interesting chap. Christian's a member of the Activism Leadership Committee of Amnesty International Australia for the ACT and Southern New South Wales region. He recently served as a senior United Nations Fellow for Minorities and Intersectionality and the United Nations Human Rights Office in the Pacific. Christian's a refugee from Cameroon. He's previously worked as a protection officer with Cameroon's National Human Rights Commission and has worked extensively in the human rights landscape, leveraging his lived experience to advocate for the protection of people at risk. He knows because he's been there. He also advocates for minorities and the atrocity crimes in southern Cameroon and across the world. Please welcome Christian.
Thank you very much. I must say I am honored, at the same time humbled, to stand before you to push a very, very strong advocacy effort. So much has been said about Julian Assange. I am sure by now we already know what this implies if Julian is extradited. And certainly our message from Amnesty International is not going to be different. I'm here today to join my friends, my colleagues, everyone that loves the pursuit of justice. My introduction actually highlights the fact that the search for justice is universal. It is utterly shocking to think that today we are here to advocate for the release of a man that shouldn't have been detained in the first place. Should Julian Assange be extradited, this will set a very, very dangerous precedent, not just for Australia, but for the rest of the world. I come from a place where I have seen and I understand what it means to be or to stand at the shadow of injustice. I strongly believe, with all the calls which we have made, that, as Honorable Alicia Payne put it, that our friends, if it should take friendship to release Julian Assange, are going to drop the charges, going to extradite him, going to stop the extradition, and going to release him to join his family. Beyond a strong advocacy effort, this is someone's dad, this is someone's husband, and this is someone's son. We've made all the strong legal points why it is wrong for Julian Assange to find himself where he finds himself in the first place. The UK is a signatory or is party to the Convention Against Torture, which says explicitly you cannot extradite someone to a place where there's reasonable grounds that he will be tortured. I will not do a review of why there is substantial evidence that should he be extradited to the US, that will certainly lead to him being tortured. Already in the words of the special rapporteur, he's already undergoing very, 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 very disturbing psychological circumstances, which in very brutal terms amounts to torture. At this particular point, we have resounded the call for the release of Julian Assange. It is very, very important to also highlight the fact that proceeding with this trial in itself is going to do damage for the perception we have in freedom of the press. It's going to put a dent on the credibility of not just the Western world, but the rest of the world. In today, a couple of minutes when I came into this ground, I was making a reflection and a basic observation, and I noticed that we don't have a lot of young people around, which is disturbing. And the reason I say this, because whatever should happen to Julian Assange is something that generations after generations will learn from. Be it a positive or a negative outcome, it is something that we need to transfer to generations to understand that at this particular moment, no matter how gloomy it seems, we are here to also celebrate the resilience and the importance of that resilience. Should he be extradited, it's not going to stop the resolve of good and decent men like Julian Assange who fight for justice, even when it puts their life in peril. I always like to quote the well-known Nelson Mandela, who spent almost an entire lifetime in prison. And today, sometimes I think those who incarcerated him, looking at him going out of prison as a hero, what they might be thinking. It might be the same for Julian Assange. So, to keep a long story short, we are asking the US to drop the charges. We are asking the UK to prevent this extradition. And we are asking the global civil society to join in this powerful advocacy effort to call for the release of a decent and hero. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. I'd like to thank all our speakers. Before you go, we will have our local songwriter singer, Sue Ellerman's going to sing a song with some bad accompaniment, and in a little while. Just some other matters, folks. Tomorrow we will be here. In fact, tonight, these great guys here who bought signs and things will be collecting some lanterns, and there'll be a lantern vigil tonight. And I believe some people may be even staying all night. And we'll be here all tomorrow with this vigil to try and bring attention to the cause of Julian Assange. Another moment down in March, we have David McBride. He's one of our people who we support. You know, David's been prosecuted and he will be sentenced on the 12th of March at Canberra Court. So if you're free, please come down at 8:30 for a rally out the front of the court to support David while he goes in to hear his fate. We really don't know what's going to happen. We just hope it's a non-custodial sentence. But again, we don't know. And of course, Richard Boyle and Dan Duggan are other two gentlemen who we are defending and trying to get justice for. So I'd like to thank you all in closing, and our speakers, to Larice, to Bernard, I think he's had to go, Sue Warham, Christian, and Alicia, who's also had to take off. And thank you all for coming and for your support. People, without people like us and like you, the world would not be a better place. So thank you again for your support. in case you're wondering again, we'll be here till 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and the lanterns will be arriving around 6 tonight. If you're free to come back, bring a bottle of wine and a chair. And we'd love to see you here. Thank you.
Julian, we all know you're a hero, locked up in Belmarsh with your life on the line. Julian, you told us of war crimes, governments don't want that truth to be known. Oh, the injustice of how you've been treated rips at the hearts and the souls of our kind. You hold a spirit of justice and truth, and the powers that be don't want those values to hold. Julian, Julian, oh, and the heartache of your closest family, they have borne witness to your persecution. They've seen the cruelty and horror you live in, locked up in Belmarsh with your life on the line. Julian, 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 we all know you're a hero, locked up in Belmarsh with your life on the line. Julian, you told us of war crimes, governments don't want that truth to be known. Oh, and the British, they played their own role. They could refuse the extradition request. They say it's not a political matter. The powers that be behaved appallingly. Julian, Julian, oh, and the FBI stooped to their low point, finding their fraudsters to speak against you. They hold a spirit of desperate evil. The powers that be were corrupt against you. Julian, Julian, enough is enough. Exactly what does that mean? They speak the language of weasel word nonsense. The powers that be, appallingly. Juliet, Juliet.
There's another song that I thought I'd like to do that I wrote a few years ago. I can't think of the bloody name of it now. I'll have to get my words out if they're here.
Seriously, we
Hey, we're winging it now, I hear. Seriously? You want your own? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay. Tipping point. Okay, we're going to see how we go with this because it's a long time since Craig and I practiced this one. So Craig will come and go as he pleases and we'll see what happens. So, we're at the tipping point, anxiety levels are rising. Sometimes you feel the tension building in the air. There's too much trouble and strife, feels like the world's going crazy. We need to pull together to heal our common despair. I think I'm out of tune as well. We're at a tipping point. I think we might finish on that. That didn't go at all well. So maybe we'll try that again after Craig and I have had a number of practices. Anyway, there you go. Now we go here. That was... How are you? All right. Very good.
So they've got plenty of security cameras watching.
I know.
For his own entertainment.
Go home with some organic zucchini.
I would love to. Thank you.
Take the bag.
I won't take the bag.
Well, if you take the bag, you can share it with the folks. Then I don't have to take them home again.
Well, it's always problem. Okay. Thanks, Tina. Annie, would you like some zucchini? You must
Zucchini and zucchini cake. That's cute, right? Yeah, well, I think that's yeah. Maybe. Well, I want that one. Sure. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I went and got the yeah, my friend, I got some more of it.
Okay, guys, we might wrap it up there. And we'll see you again tomorrow morning, usual time, usual place, usual stuff. Hope you're having a great day. Catch you later. Not anymore, just turn it off.